The runaway, my wife, Ann, and I, both 38, have been married for almost 10 years. We have 4 children together. She was always close with the father of an ex and he recently passed away. The ex then reached out to Ann and they have been Facebook messaging constantly for the past 3 weeks. This is a guy who cheated on her, lied to her, and when he got back from the military went to his other girls first. There has been no contact between the two of them for over 15 years. I only met him once when Ann and I started dating. He happened to be at a line dancing place we went to and decided to cut in and push me out of the way, to which I responded by pushing him away and telling him to leave, which he did. Not the best first impression. Apparently, he and Ann were best friends since kindergarten and started dating in high school. The relationship was very one-sided. When they were dating, Ann wasn't ready to sleep with him in high school, so he slept with another girl and then blamed it on Ann not being ready, for which Ann forgave him and for a while blamed herself, or at least convinced herself that was justified. Ann would be there for him and support him especially while he was going through issues with being away for the military. When he returned, he slept around before finally coming back to Ann and she kept taking him back. That happened with every deployment. He was manipulative and controlling from what Ann and her family has described. Ann's aunt even told me about how Ann always had a blind spot for him and she was afraid Ann would never leave him. She did finally leave him and met me a year or so later. We dated for 5 years then got married. Now, Ann has not lied to me or misled me about this. She did tell me she was talking to him and how often she thought about him. What my gut is telling me. It's hard to convey what we have been through and why I feel we have strong marriage. But with those trials comes the longing for something easier, something reminiscent of a simpler time, like an ex from high school. I will say the reason we dated for so long is more because I wasn't ready for marriage. She was pretty patient with me while she waited. She was ready to get married at the 3-year mark and made no secret of it. Aside from this, she is also legit the perfect wife and takes great care of the kids. It's just hard to believe she could do this purposely. Before an ultimatum, we're going to see a marriage counselor. I usually don't put much stock in counseling and have said before if you're there, it's already over. Eating my words, I guess. I'll give that a shot and see where it goes. Crazy part is this just happened to my friend almost exactly. Except it was a work friend, not an old ex that crept into his wife's life. He ignored it and joked about how close they were getting with all of us who told him to end it. He didn't listen, he trusted her, now they are divorced and fighting over the kids. Update, truth is, I thought giving her a firm no would be controlling and I've never been that way. So initially, a few days ago, I said, slow down communication, it bothers me, but do what makes you happy. I did not set clear boundaries as to what slow down meant. I could not have been more wrong. Last night we had a conversation where I let my emotions out, something I rarely do. I am always patient, understanding and trusting. I rarely lose my temper, even with 4 kids running amok. But there was too much of a risk here to let it go. I went full caveman as a reply above stated and laid it all out. I did not give her an ultimatum in the form of us or him, but I explained just talking to him put a rift in our marriage and endangers everything we have built. Trust is already shaken. She has proven how easily he could slip back in and regain her trust. The fog, as a previous reply said, that she was in as a result of her ex's father's passing, put her in a vulnerable state and the ex swooped in to take advantage of it. Their history is too great and their friendship previously led to a relationship because he manipulated her into it. I reminded her how he used her originally and how he was doing it again and told her this was my way of protecting her if she wouldn't protect herself. I also reminded her that relationship caused her a lot of stress, trust issues and anxiety that she still deals with. I still don't believe she would have cheated on her own accord. However, I do believe the risk of her not realizing what he was trying to do until it was too late would have been a real possibility. I got angry, I got loud, and I told her nothing would stop me from ending their communication. I have read too many posts on here prior to posting my own question because I thought it was unique to think playing the nice guy will work. Newsflash, the answer is always the same no matter what the individual circumstances are, video after video. OP don't take the advice and forgive and trust, and then when something serious happens, they forgive again and try to hold on, but then it's too late. Upon learning my true feelings about it, she immediately said she would stop talking to him without so much as a single word of defense. She said she did not understand how much it bothered me and, in her mind, it was simply her trying to reconnect with a friend who had reached out in a time of need. She was very upset for how she made me feel and scared it would affect how I felt about her and whether I could trust her. But I told her in reality she had done nothing wrong. Yet, she had been honest with me, she had told me they were talking. I read all their messages before she knew I was spying and all were innocent. I even checked phone records to see if they called on the phone or texted and his number was not in her phone or her phone records. I found the number through Instant Checkmate and did not tell her I was checking that. The communication had to stop because it could lead to her doing something wrong and the risk to us was not worth the gain of her getting her answers or her old friend back, she agreed. While she still said it would never have led to anything inappropriate, the answers she was looking for were not worth losing what we have. She was very upset for how she made me feel and agreed if the shoe were on the other foot, I would have been sleeping at a friend's house for just doing what she did. She said in the 15 years we've been together she has never seen me so emotional, shaken or angry. I told her there was nothing that has happened in all my life that caused me to feel like this. She sent a final message to him last night in front of me saying that they will no longer be talking and blocked him on Messenger. While I am certain this is the end of it, I will still keep my ears up. However, I explained how much I love her, the lengths I am willing to go in order to keep this marriage together and the level of aggression I would bring to that fight. I was very ready to go to his house and stop it that way if she wouldn't, which I admitted to her after she decided to stop talking to him. To anyone searching these videos for answers, the answer is always the same, even if it seems innocent. Trust your gut, fight now, fight hard and do not take any excuses. This is all or nothing. The app, she doesn't have that on her phone. She did have Snapchat, but they were not friends on Snapchat. She also didn't use it for anything, so she deleted her Snapchat app from her phone. The MC is someone I know and trust, but absolutely not needed. It was an excuse to put the burden of telling my wife she is wrong on someone else. Better to do it myself, as previous replies have said. I am a very thorough person. I went through every app on her phone before she knew I was looking. There was nothing on there that I did not recognize. I checked the App Store history as well. We both have all each other's passwords for everything. She's pretty technologically incompetent. I'm always fixing her phone settings or reconnecting her watch. I have this angle covered. I've seen it happen to a very close friend, and out of the 5 or 6 people I talk to frequently, 3 of them are divorced. There will always be a voice in my head wondering what if. But based on her reaction when she found out how I really felt and the look on her face, I don't think I need to worry now or ever. That doesn't mean I'm going to put my head in the sand. I am going to work on our marriage and being there when she needs me, making sure the flame never wavers. I don't think this was her looking for something else. It was her doing what she always does. Be a good friend when someone is in need, whether they deserve it or not, but it was still scary as hell. If she cheated, it would be her fault, not his, and it would be beyond repair. But I don't think my wife is in that category. That was more a general statement and something that scared me into action based on what ifs rather than reality. The fact that she was so honest right from the get-go about the conversations and never tried to hide any of it makes me believe her intentions were noble, regardless of how naive she was being. She even admitted she could see my point, and once she understood how I was thinking, completely agreed. Her problem is she only sees the good in people and makes excuses for the bad. She did that for me and brought me out of a dark place when we met. It's part of what I love about her. Her and I both agreed on the zero contact, zero tolerance. She said she appreciated how clear I was and reiterated how she thought our marriage was better because of it. She appreciated the direct stance. As much as I know a lot of people on this channel will say this had nothing to do with me and was all her, I agree with them and you. I constantly work on myself and our marriage, as does she. I still get her flowers randomly and still treat her like a queen. I am in pretty good shape and train in Aikido, hence not really worrying about the confrontation with an overweight ex-Marine. I regularly do tough run and workout. I'm self-employed, work from home and have a good work-life balance. Always here when the kids need something or she needs help. One can always improve, and that's always been my goal. Another update. I humbly request that judgment is not placed on my wife or myself for the following. I know it's an issue and we are working on it. I'm not asking for advice, opinion, or sympathy. I just put this up to help anyone else who is going through something similar by letting them know how we are working it out. Please, no brutal responses either, and please don't badmouth my wife. She is doing the best she can. She and I have continued to talk about this over the past few days. Even though she has stopped communication, she told me it was hard for her to do and that she would need time to put it behind her. She has not been angry at me or resentful for this at all, but she has been sad. She feels like she is losing the friendship all over again, which I saw as ridiculous and hurtful, but I heard her out and tried to put myself in her shoes. We've narrowed it down to the fact she never had any trustworthy men in her life. Her father always called her and her brother her mother's kids and didn't give her the time of day. Her brother was a complete ass to her growing up and both physically and mentally abusive towards her. For the most part, that is also the type she dated. Her brother has toned down now and I have a good relationship with him and my wife's family. She is not in contact with any of her other exes except for one other who I like a lot. Her family has not shown any of their former habits around me and I would not let that stand if they did. This ex was the first guy who showed any kind of attention towards my wife, almost to the level of protective, when they were friends. That all changed when they started dating and he became controlling and emotionally abusive, but she can't let go of the only guy in her life that was somewhat nice to her, relatively speaking, that she knew prior to them dating. That also explains why she held on to him for so long while he treated her so badly. She saw him as the friend and kept reasoning away his misdeeds. There are also things that my wife thinks I won't understand with how she grew up, but this ex does, because he had a hard life growing up as well. I grew up in a very loving, not wealthy, but well-off family in a very nice town. She grew up in a family that was dysfunctional, secretive and cold, in a town akin to the other side of the tracks. Her father mistreated her mother and them. She was always put down by her family. Her ex had a similar upbringing. As I said from beginning, my wife had a close relationship with this ex's father, the reason being she had no relationship with her own. The second conflict is, my family, though very loving, can be very overbearing for someone who is not used to it. Early in our marriage, when we had our first son, my mother infiltrated every aspect of our lives, and regardless of what my wife would want, my mother would do as she pleased. It took me way too long to put an end to it because I was too uncomfortable putting my mother in her place. I finally did and sat everyone down together to tell them what needed to change, then made sure they followed through. To this day, my mother still occasionally tries to impose her will, but I shut it down. It is not even a big deal anymore, and I guess it should not have been back then for me to speak up. But I found out that has bothered my wife until this day. The third main conflict was the ex's father. It had been a weird relationship, and my wife knew I did not always approve of the way he talked to her. I had a conversation with him about it and was better, but not where I wanted it to be. I let it go though, and she appreciated that. Since he has passed, there is a hole. My wife did not think she could talk about missing the ex's father with me because of how I felt about that relationship. But she could certainly talk to her ex about it. As ridiculous as this all sounds to me, thinking about it from my perspective, if I put myself in her shoes, I can begin to understand. Our conversations about this ex, my wife's feelings, and mine, have brought us much closer. I found out she has always felt like I would eventually leave her because she felt she was not good enough, like she was broken. That is how she has always been treated, and that is what she is used to. Even 15 years of me treating her like a queen didn't change it. She said nothing I did or said made her feel that way, she just always worried. In fact, the way I treated her made her feel like she did not deserve what we have. She told me that while dating, she was always getting herself ready for when I would break up with her. The fact that I took so long to propose did not help. Me going crazy over this was the best thing that could have happened. She finally understands what she means to me, and after our continued talks, we are in a great place. She wants to see a therapist to work through her abandonment and insecurity issues and asked that I go with her. She understands why she feels the way she feels, and she knows she needs to get past it. I have never felt closer to her, and she feels the same. This could have gone in a very different direction. We talked, we fought, we talked again. Originally, I was pissed, but really just hurt, that she told me she missed talking to her ex and that it was hard for her. I didn't understand how talking to someone for a week or two after 15 years could bring back all that emotion. I could have just stayed angry and she could have just got defensive and kept her feelings in, or lied to me about how she felt and let me believe she didn't care and all was good. But it wouldn't have been, and it would have continued to bother her. I could have literally pushed her right back to the ex who would feign understanding how she felt and be there for her, like a snake in the grass. I did get lucky in that she cares as much as I do. In many videos, one party was clearly interested in saving the marriage and the other clearly was not. In that situation, there is not much you can do. While this was not anywhere near a marriage ender, and certainly not anywhere near as bad as most of the other videos, she is still not to have any contact with the ex. That is the decision we both made together. She blocked him so she can't even see a response he might try to send her. She knows it's unhealthy, she knows she has demons, and we're going to work them out. I can see how you would doubt her sincerity, however I do trust her, and I think it would be very difficult for her to fake the emotions she is showing. She has given me no reason to doubt her and has been nothing but honest this whole time, when it would have been far easier to withhold how she was feeling after starting the no contact. Or worse yet, just never bring it up in the first place because she knew I wouldn't be okay with it. All that said, I'm still on my toes and will be for a while. My eyes are open. Some people are saying divorce is the only option and it's inevitable. While she did make a pretty big mistake, I don't see it as unforgivable. I will fight for this and for my kids, and I will win. This painful former lover has delusions of being simply adequate. He's a dim-witted laborer who simply locks and unlocks lockers for people. And I may be a little arrogant because my profession requires it, but he is no match for me, intellectually or physically. This is not a case of hubris. I will win. If this goes further, I simply make him understand. Few months later, she is no longer communicating with the ex at all, and our marriage is stronger than it's ever been. She did not get the answers she was looking for, but she now says she doesn't need them. She is seeing a therapist and was diagnosed with PTSD from emotional trauma in her childhood that she had suppressed. That trauma led to her to repeat past unhealthy relationships and seek out people who treated her poorly because that is what she felt she deserved. According to her therapist, she is going through therapy now and is working through the trauma and retraining her brain to process it in a healthy way. It has made a world of difference in her daily life and stress levels, and I swear even the kids are happier. She is much more patient and generally calmer, and she is even sleeping well. For good measure, I also reached out to the ex a while back to make sure he understood contact was off limits. I was expecting a trash can. However, he turned out to be pretty decent and very understanding. He was apologetic and never meant to cause any trouble. He said he was happily married and he was not looking for anything but reconnecting with an old friend while he was going through the passing of his father. He explained to me that most people did not like his father, even his current wife. So, it was nice to talk to my wife again because she had such a strong bond with his father that the ex felt he could confide in my wife and share memories of his father with her. He said he would let me know if she ever reached out to him but would not respond. He did mention that he would like for us to all be friendly at some point in the future, but he would understand, regardless of the direction it goes. He and I are actually into a lot of the same hobbies. I also found out he and I know a lot of the same people from when he worked as a landscaper. Upon talking to people I have known for 15 to 20 years, who also know the ex, they all vouched that he had been an ass when he was younger but had really turned himself around. The therapist did say to us that she has often seen the chain of events that stared like this end in divorce. Usually, it's because people don't identify the real issues and stop communicating, leading both parties' minds to come up with all kinds of possible problems, and they just grow out of control. Then they look for comfort elsewhere because home becomes so stressful. I was lucky in that my wife was willing to talk to a therapist and admit she has trauma that she has been hiding even from herself all these years. Without getting into too much detail, my wife has also suffered from emotional conditions since I've known her. It started out not so bad, but as the stress of our kids and lockdown progressed, it got very, very bad. I'm actually thankful this happened because it opened up my eyes and she was finally able to share everything with me that she had been holding back because she didn't want me to worry about her or get scared away. She was trying to deal with most of it by herself, but now she is really working on herself and I can be there for her through this, which helps reduce her stress. The fact that his wife knew was pretty telling though. If you're planning on cheating, you probably wouldn't tell your wife about the girl you're talking to. At the end of the day though, I can only do what I can do. I certainly can't control my wife's mind or her actions. I think I've covered my bases pretty extensively. Also, things are going very smooth right now. There is no indication of anything going on. I sit in with my wife in some of her therapy sessions when she asks me to, and we are spending a lot of time together. Also, because of how we do our monthly budget, I would notice money missing for a burner phone. I have notifications set up so anytime a new app is added to her phone, the receipt for the app, whether free or paid, is sent to my email. I suppose the response to that is he could buy her one, and I'll give you that. But I just don't think it's something I have to worry about. I'll point to the fact again that she was honest throughout this whole ordeal and never lied to me. I see no reason she would start now. When I was in 4th grade, I picked up a snake off the playground because the lunch aide said we couldn't play there with the snake sitting on the slide. I nearly gave her a heart attack and then I got sent to the principal's office, who proceeded to lecture me about how dangerous snakes were. Thing is, he didn't know anything about snakes and didn't know a dangerous one from a harmless one, and in 4th grade, I knew everything. J.K., but I did know the difference between a copperhead and a garter snake. Snakes never bothered me. At this point, it's unfair to put my wife through any further scrutiny, and I trust her. She is a very attractive woman and has had her share of guys coming on to her when she is out with her friends or at her work, but she has never wavered. I was also never the jealous type because I knew I could trust her. I know about the trauma she went through, and the fact she turned out as great as she did with what she went through growing up speaks to her character and her resolve. She could have gone down a very different path, but she held on to her self-respect despite what her family and boyfriends did to her. Looking back at this now, and after I spoke to her therapist, I think I may have blown this out of proportion due to my own insecurities. I would not do anything differently if I had it to do over, but I may have been a little too hard on my wife about it. I was more concerned about how I felt than why things were happening the way they were, or what she was feeling. I think that is the lesson I learned here. I kept arguing with her about how I felt and never put myself in her shoes because I couldn't replicate her past experiences to think the way she was thinking. I really don't believe she had ill intentions. She was just trying to handle things the way she always has, by herself. But as a result of this experience, she no longer feels that way and has shared every struggle that she has had, and is having, that she didn't want to burden me with. The struggles don't involve other people, but more her view of herself and how she always feels inferior. Too short, too heavy, and she's not. She always feels like she needs to be perfect. She worries about the job she's doing as a mom, as a wife, as a human being, that she feels like she needs to give more back but doesn't have time, so she views herself as selfish, which is the furthest thing from the truth. All these things she has been battling in silence, and now they are out in the open so I can help her. These are feelings she's always had because of how she was treated, that she's dealt with by suppressing them and pretending. But it has been incredibly difficult for her. And while some would say after 10 years of marriage I should have figured it out, or she should have been more honest, she was scared that letting me that far in, letting herself be that vulnerable, would lead me to judge her, or me pulling away from her, and she could not deal with that. They were unhealthy secrets that she reasoned were just her having her privacy. They are out now and we are moving forward together. Either way, I have made my position clear to the ex and his wife. I have deemed him not an imminent or immediate threat, moved him out of the way, and we are moving on. I'll continue to be vigilant, but this snake has been removed. The larger issue here is this is a huge step forward in our marriage and relationship, and I have a lot of work to do to help my wife see herself the way I see her. There is no growth without discomfort. I think we needed this to grow. She has maintained the no contact. As a result of this whole situation, I have become very suspicious of just about everything though, so I am keeping a close eye on everything. She knows she's screwed up and she is doing what she needs to. I would not have let her family in on it unless I really couldn't control it on my own, but at that point, it would be time for divorce papers anyway. I would not want to stay in a marriage just because her family guilted her into it. I chose to make my expectations clear and confront the ex instead, as I described in an earlier post. She has also come clean on some little white lies she told when we started dating 15 years ago without me even asking or knowing about them, and about things she had left out from her past, which really were more about privacy than her keeping anything from me. She was afraid I would leave her if I knew certain things about her past, from prior to us dating. Truth is, I don't really care what she did prior to us dating, but to her it was a big deal. She claims most of this is her being afraid that I will judge her for poor decisions and bad habits, and she was used to dealing with it by herself, so she didn't want to burden me with worrying about her. However, I explained to her that the real reason she wasn't telling me, in my opinion, was to protect herself from my reaction. And as soon as she decided not to tell me those things because of my reaction, it became about secrecy rather than privacy, and was deceitful. I have seen a notable change in the way she reacts to being questioned since this whole thing started. Initially, she would get very defensive and try to justify her action. Nonsense justifications, of course, but to her it made sense. When I called her on her nonsense excuses, she would storm out and try to avoid the topic. Now she is calmer, actually admits she screwed up and makes no excuses. As much as this whole thing sucked, it knocked down the rest of her protective walls she built up during the hard times she went through growing up. She was always afraid of letting anyone too far in because she was most afraid of feeling vulnerable or being judged when in fact, she was her own worst critic and assumed everyone would see her as poorly as she saw herself. She had low self-esteem growing up because of how she was treated by her own family and dated assholes and had random hookups to make herself feel better. Most of this thread has been about what she did wrong and why that makes her the bad guy. But she went through physical X as a child, alcohol dependency, deals with PTSD, and still raises 4 kids, cooks, cleans, keeps the family schedule, does laundry, runs errands, arranges play dates for the kids, keeps me sane with my workload, and is a fantastic mom and wife. The good far outweighs the bad. I think the key is clear communication and rock-solid boundaries, which have been set. She can no longer claim ignorance or being naive. She also no longer feels the need to protect me from things in her past because it's all out in the open now. The most interesting part is, she suffers from anxiety and other emotional disorders, but since this all came out and she's no longer keeping anything from me, she is doing incredibly well in regard to those conditions and has even been able to stop medications she was on. It's like the secrecy was causing her anxiety because she was so afraid I would find out. At least that's what her therapist says. But my wife is happier, healthier, and though I'm still getting over trust issues, I think we are in a really good place. She is still seeing a therapist to reconcile her past and continues to make progress. She has also confronted her family member who abused her and received a heartfelt apology, which really helped her progress. Their relationship is still rocky, but it is improving. Many posts I seemed overzealous about leaving her and never being able to trust her again. I think it was more about helping her get through her own demons, and I will be here to help and support her as she does. To be fair, I initially only told her to slow it down. Looking back, I agree I should have told her to stop all contact right then. I don't think I would have gone the divorce paper route at that point, because I would never threaten something I wasn't ready and willing to follow through on, and I was not ready at that point. Had she started talking to him again after the no contact boundary was set, I feel like that would have been the right time for the papers, but not as a threat, as a course of action. Half a year later, a quick update, all is good, there's been no contact. Admission that there was no point in furthering communication and she was acting stupid. Turns out there were other things in my wife's past that she hid from me because I was a nice guy and she thought if I knew them I wouldn't have dated her. Not technically lied about, but just never mentioned or refused to talk about. With my immaturity, insecurity back then, she is probably right. However, I understand what happened in her past has nothing to do with me or us now. For her therapist, the guilt she was feeling over those omissions most likely had an effect on retreating to bad habits and thinking she deserved worse. She had a lot more issues growing up than she told me about initially, from abusive relationships to self-worth issues and the way she let people treat her, but we are working through her recovery together and she has made a lot of progress in a year. She did admit to straight up lying about certain things, nothing to do with infidelity or anything serious though, more to do with bad habits. Interestingly, I feel like I have grown too. I'm your typical do anything for anyone kind of guy, no matter what I give up doing it. Not quite a pushover but close. The way I handled this was out of character for me, and more direct, confrontational than I would usually be, especially when confronting her ex. That kind of gave me a kick in the butt to respect my time and what I have to offer. That simple shift in attitude has helped me accomplish a lot over the past year. From making more at my job by finding and signing more clients, to getting more things I want to do done by respecting my time and telling people no. I've also made it a point to let my wife know she is appreciated as much as I can. I treat her like we are newlyweds, telling her she's gorgeous, surprising her with flowers occasionally, picking up her favorite takeout, doing the laundry or randomly cleaning up rooms, etc. She is a stay-at-home mom, but I try to give her some time off as well. My comment: this is a positive update, and I'm glad that things are going well in your marriage. However, you only mentioned how you are treating your wife. Is she making the same amount of effort towards you as you are towards her?